Good afternoon and welcome to the meeting of the Joint Standards Committee here at the City of York Council on Tuesday the 23rd of July. Welcome to those around the table and also welcome to those that are watching it via the recording. Just want to go through some attending and apologies. So we have apologies from Councillor Kent, and she is being substituted by Councillor Lomas. Thank you, Councillor Lomas, for giving us time in your very, very busy diary. And the other note to mention is that Councillor Stuart Rawlings, who was a member of this committee by virtue of him being a parish councillor, is no longer on the committee as he's resigned as a parish councillor. And so we have a vacancy for a parish council member. I would just like at this stage to table a vote of thanks in Councillor Rawlings. Councillor Rawlings has been on this committee long before I arrived in 2019 and has been a long-standing member. He has been very active on this committee in terms of the subcommittees and subgroups. So I would just like, with your permission, to table a vote of thanks in him. If I can just have a nod from members. Yes. That's unanimous. Thank you for that. And we're joined by our independent persons, Jolie and Rose Mazar. Good to have you both with us. We're also joined by the officers around the table, Francis Harrison, who's the Deputy Monitoring Officer and Head of Legal. Jane is from Democratic Services, and Richard, who you can't see, is making sure that all the recording and what have you is in line. So thank you for that. Agenda item number 1, declarations of interest. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Chair. Can I declare an instant item 6, the case handling procedure? This is all the cases I'm named in. I shall withdraw from the meeting during the consideration of the case in which I'm involved.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other declarations of interest? No? Okay. Go on to item number 2, which is the exclusion of press and public. This is for items that we deem to be of sensitive nature and that we require the press and public not to have access to. And that will be for the monitoring officer's report and the complaints received that is unredacted. There will be an opportunity for us to look at a redacted non-public version of the update, but it's really just for that unredacted report. So can I just have a confirmation that we're happy for press and public to be removed at that stage? Okay, thank you very much for that. Item number 3 is the minutes of the meeting that we held on the 14th of May. You have those in front of you for those that were present. Anybody have any comments on them? Yeah. Okay. And just have a show of hands, happy to approve those? Okay, thank you very much. I will sign those in due course. They're the only minutes to look at. Item number 4, urgent business. I have no items of urgent business that we'll be looking at this afternoon, which brings us on to item 5 of the agenda, public participation. And I have Diane Green, who is with us, and she wants to look at item number 7, the work plan, relationship and training provided by CYC with parish and town councils. So Ms. Breed, if you'd like to come to the table. You have 3 minutes, but I'm in a very generous mood this afternoon. So.
Can I first of all say Chair, but Stuart. Sorry. The Stuart's resigned from my parish council and he will very much be missed. Very much be missed.
Very kind.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee. I need to make it clear that I am currently a parish councillor and have been for some 25 years. My comments today are mine and not my parish council's. I do understand many of the committee are themselves parish councillors. You have 2 members who are nominated by parish councillors themselves via YLCA. I do think the valuable work parish councillors do on a daily basis are not always acknowledged. We're unpaid volunteers and give our time and make a difference to our community. Some parish councils are struggling to fill vacancies. In my own parish, after the elections in May 2023, we only had 8 councillors when we should have 15. We have managed to recruit since then, but are still running with 5 vacancies. Could the committee please consider, alongside YLCA, running some sort of campaign to encourage local residents to become parish councillors? My parish council has lost several young councillors because they have full-time demanding jobs, young families, and cannot commit to the work we do as a parish, which is very frustrating. When becoming a parish councillor, I do believe many councils are not aware of their councillors are aware of their responsibilities. And I believe this has led to a number of complaints being received by CYC, which I believe could, with training, would have been avoided. Sadly, some parish councillors town councils, a very small number, and over the years have become somewhat politicised, and I think this is regrettable, but I understand that the Standards Committee can't really do anything about that. In my own parish, we have all political views represented. We work together in a constructive manner, politics aside, and this does happen probably in 99% of parish and town councils. As I said earlier, many members of this committee are parish councillors and are aware of the work we do. I'm also aware that you as a committee have done some valuable work with YLCA and had Sheena Spence from YLCA to address the committee. YLCA does a great deal of good work to support parish and town councils by way of advice, training. However, there is a cost. You have to pay to be a member. And training is also at a cost. Some smaller parishes are hard pushed to find the money. YLCA does run an in-depth training course for new councillors, but again, this is costly. When I very first became a councillor, I attended a training session run by City of York Council in the Guildhall, and it was well attended. We were given written advice and also a good councillor's guide, and we had a presentation on standards of behaviour from the monitoring officer. I found this invaluable, and indeed still have the book. I was given, perhaps you could consider something similar. As I understand, all ward councillors are required to attend some mandatory courses after being elected, but I'm unsure if standards is one of them. If it is, then why not for new parish councils and town councillors? I know you are looking at doing some work around areas of the city that are unparished and feel rightly they are losing out on a layer of funding that could benefit their local community. I would ask you to consider using the expertise of
30 seconds.
Parish councillors and YLCA to take this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina. Really appreciate your comments. They will be noted, and when we look at the work plan, we'll take those into account. But thank you very much for that. So, item number 6 on the agenda, which is the case handling procedure update, and we will receive a verbal update on the case handling procedure amendments. I would just comment that whilst I understand that there are certain circumstances and situations which require a verbal update, generally I think any update should be in paper so that we can at least get a sight of them beforehand. So I've made that feeling known before, but on this occasion I accept that there will be occasions where to prepare and send out a written update sometimes isn't necessary. But I just want to be careful that we're not letting things kind of slip, and the officers are aware of my views anyway. On that, I'll hand over to Francis to give us that verbal update. Thank you, Francis.
Thank you, Chair, and I do note those comments. The reason that I requested to give a verbal update is simply because the update is very, very short. Essentially, we have had a general election which has stood in the way of the continued work of the Constitution Working Group. That Constitution Working Group still needs to see the revisions to the case handling procedure which have been through this committee and have been passed forward to members of that group, so they have them, they have been tabled. I can give no estimate as to how quickly or slowly members of the Constitution Working Group will go through the case handling procedure. It took quite a long time for the work to be completed by that group on the council procedure rules. They have now been dealt with, so at the top of the list are the case handling procedure and the terms of reference from the Health and Wellbeing Board. So it is one of 2 items waiting to be addressed by the Constitution Working Group, who have their meetings programmed through until Christmas. And I'm afraid I'm really in no position to estimate when they will end their deliberations on them.
Okay. Thank you, Francis. Open it for comments from members. No. So all I would simply say in response to that, thank you very much for that. I mean, clearly, until the procedures are approved and the changes are taken to full council, we still have to continue to work to the old procedures, which we've already ascertained are somewhat flawed in certain areas. So I guess as members, we just need to kind of bear with that until such time as it does run its course. But yeah, the changes that were suggested were all changes for the good, and were from a very common sense basis. There was no other reason to have them changed. But until such times as they are changed, we'll continue to work to our procedure. But thank you for what you've done. Thank you for your continued work and efforts to get these through. Bringing us on to item number 7, which is the review of the work plan. Before we come to that, I kind of want to. There are a couple of things I want to look at in the work plan, but I do want to look at the process and make you aware, as members of this committee, of the process to replace a parish council member of this committee. So rather than hearing my voice drolling on for the next 2 or 3 minutes or longer, I'll maybe ask either Jane or Francis just to share with us what the process is.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I've looked it up, and I can just read the paragraph in the Constitution, which is mercifully short on what happens. So, a casual vacancy which arises during the municipal year shall be filled as soon as practicable by the relevant council. A casual vacancy in the case of a parish councillor shall be reported to the Yorkshire Local Councils Association, who will seek nominations from the parish councils in York. A ballot will then be held in order to fill the parish councillor vacancy on the committee. We do always need to have a parish councillor when we deal with anything touching a parish council. So clearly having a full complement of our parish council colleagues is very, very important.
Thank you for that. I would like just to add to that as Ms. Breen, can I call you by your first name? Fine. So, as Di mentioned in her public participation, many of us are parish councillors, myself and Councillor Runciman, Councillor Fisher. We are parish councillors, as well as our 2 substantive parish councillors on this committee. So we kind of know how parish councils work and what they do, and the amazing work that they do. I guess really the issue that we have is that YLCA, quite rightly, will go to the 31 parish councils and will ask for a nomination to sit on this committee. And if there are more than one nomination, or if there is more than one nomination, then a ballot then takes place. But I don't recall ever there being a ballot, Councillor, when you may recall having been on this. No, so it's always been something that's been has been a really difficult kind of role to find somebody to fill. We have been very, very fortunate to have excellent members of parish councils on this committee. Councillor Woodby.
There was actually one contested election, which is the one I got on in 2021.
Oh, right. There we go. Well, forgive me.
Apparently it's the one and only time.
Well, there we are. So I must have had my eyes closed on that one. Anyway, so I guess what I would say is if we can encourage our parish councils to find somebody, I think it'd be really, really helpful. But that's the process. And if anyone has any questions for Francis or any general comments about the process to recruit? Joe. Sorry, Joe, and then yourself.
It's just a comment about making that easier. Should another parish council decide to leave for whatever reason, would one be sufficient, or do you need a true fallback situation like can a city councillor who is a parish councillor be considered a parish councillor for this purpose, or as part of the electoral process, if you get no nominations directly from parishes, for someone who's only a parish councillor, would it be possible to try and strong arm is not the right word to use, but persuade a city councillor who is also a parish councillor to act even as a standby until the situation gets easier? I'm just worried
I
about
understand what you're
it
saying.
becomes impossible.
Yeah. I would defer to Francis on that one.
Thank you, Chair. It's not a question that we've come across before.
No.
My instinct is to say that person should be a parish councillor through and through, and not two-hatted, but we haven't been there, and I'm afraid that's not a conclusive answer, but it's something we need to be mindful of.
It's a pure fallback situation. If you get desperate, what are you supposed to do?
Councillor Runciman.
Thank you. I just respond to Joe before I say what I was going to say. Actually, Joe, I think you make a valid point. We do have more councillors that are on parish councils, and I don't think I'd quite use the word desperate, but we might have words in their ears should we need to. What I was going to say is, will we be writing to thank Councillor Rawlings? We all know he's been poorly, and it would be very good if we could send a letter just thanking him for his years of service.
Excellent. Are members happy for me to do that as the chair of this committee? Yes. Yeah, lovely. We'll get that. So thank you. It's a really, really good suggestion, and one that we'll see through. Again, I just, whilst I think we ought to be having conversations with members of our parish council, whether we can have conversations with City of York councillors that are dual-hatted, I'm not so sure. I don't think you can sit on this committee as a parish councillor and is that?
We can make them aware that the recruitment is happening.
Yeah. No, excellent. Thank you very much, Councillor Runciman. So, looking at the kind of the forward plan. The 17th of September is our next meeting, and there are a couple of things that are on there and a couple of things that I'd like to add, because I think one thing's kind of slipped off the agenda, and I want to bring it back. So obviously our regular work, the monitoring officer's report, and then the review of the work plan. But the two things that I'd like to look at, one is, if you remember the training update, just because that seems to have fallen off the agenda slightly. It'd be good just to bring that back, just to give us an update as to where we are with that, if members are comfortable with that being on the work plan. It just, not that there'll be a huge report, but it just gives us that opportunity to continue to look at it. And the other thing that I wanted to kind of bring in a sense, Di's comments, we hadn't colluded beforehand, but actually one of the things that I think is really important is the work that we do with parish councils. And in the past, it was muted, and we kind of attempted it under Janie Berry's reign many years ago, where we tried to get out and to speak to and visit parish councils. And I think I'd like to see that try and resurrected again. Now, whether that's just, myself and one of the senior officers, or whether that's us as members of this committee visiting parish councils, I'm particularly keen. I'm looking at my colleagues at the end of the table there. So members that aren't in wards that have got parishes, this is an opportunity for you as a substantive member of this committee to visit some of the parish councils and just maybe share with them a little bit about what we do, find out if there are any particular training needs, and then either through this committee or through YLCA or through some other, through democratic services, look at seeing what we can offer in terms of training. Because I think Di's point about training is a really valid point. And there are online courses that you can do. Joint standards training is not a mandatory training for members that are elected to the City of York Council. But I think in order to address the numbers of complaints that were coming through, particularly for parish councillors, I think we tried to look at addressing that through kind of training and dialogue. So that's something I'd like to bring on. Councillor Runciman.
when we were discussing the training programme, we actually focused in on planning, if you remember, and said that we should open up the planning training to parish and town councils, and I'm sure that will be taken forward. Now, it's been suggested we look at standards, which is a different matter entirely, but I think it should be considered.
Good, thank you. Councillor Pavlovic.
Thank you, Chair. Equally, is there any mileage in doing some analysis of the complaints that we've investigated over the past 12 months, seeing where the common themes, the threads, the training, identified training needs are, and actually then saying, well, this could be done across as an offer to all parish councils. And the point that Di made, particularly when there is a post-election period, is inviting them to that induction alongside newly elected ward councillors as well as established ward councillors at the start of each new electoral cycle. I don't know whether that's legally possible, but I don't see why, if we're already putting training on, that we can't open it out to other parish council colleagues. Yeah, and that's a very good point. Francis.
Chair, obviously the full item you've asked to come in September, but we have discussed before the fact that we have a bank of resources through our member induction programme being recorded. I would have thought makes that infinitely possible. The second thing is our annual report does analyse the nature of complaints, where they're coming from. The two things that we know is that interests and respect are the most common areas of complaint, and when we have investigated complaints previously, some of the advice we have sent out, I've actually sent out the training materials to a particular parish council where there was a recurring issue around interest, and have sent out guidance. We've also in the past shared the things that members have the benefit of on their agendas for city council papers is the quick guide to interests. There's no reason why we shouldn't share that with our parish councils so that they can adopt that practice. So there definitely are things that we can do and are doing, but definitely we should be looking to build on those.
Yeah, and I think part of the reasons why I want to look at parish council visits is that it's one thing sending some information to a parish council clerk and the chair maybe gets sight of it, then it becomes an agenda item that no one speaks to because it's just some communication that's come down from the monitoring officer from CYC. I guess one of the benefits of us visiting as representatives of the Joint Standards Committee is that actually we, in our 5-minute submission at Parish Council, can actually explain what we do, how we do it, refer members of parish councils to this particular document, to the resources that are available. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is that if that's on the agenda for September, which I'd like it to be, do we do nothing between now and think about it and then in September formulate what we want to do in terms of a plan? Or would you be happy for me and for Mark and for Francis just to talk about how we put that together so we bring it to you in September as a suggestion of how we go forward with the visits? So would the latter be more acceptable? Yeah. Councillor Fisher, I was aware you did have your hand up, sorry, and I've kind of jumped across you.
Thank you, Chair. I've sat on a couple of assessment panels, well, actually hearing panels, which have found that there was a breach of the standards. And both of them were, two of the ones I have been on, been more than two. Two of them were about chairing the meeting. And this is a particular problem. Some chairs do not undergo any training before they chair a meeting. No. And it's a very, very different process from actually sitting there as a member of the parish council, actually having to control it and keep things in hand. Yeah. Now, YLCA do provide training, but it doesn't seem a lot of chairs are going on it. I'm very lucky. I've got a very good parish clerk, and she said to me, "You need to go on a training course because, you know, and she acts like a little electric shock machine. If I do anything wrong, I get a shock.
Like Jane with me, is that?
Yeah, you know. But it is really important the chair in particular knows how
Yeah.
to handle the meeting, because otherwise, if they don't, things can get seriously out of hand.
Yeah, really good point. Councillor Lomas.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to remind everyone that you need to be quite close to your microphone so it picks up your voice properly. So don't sit too far back, and if you are sitting far back, move your microphone closer. We've had a lot of issues in the last couple of weeks about use of microphones, and it is an access issue, and it will also help for people who want to watch the recording of this later. So keep your microphone in front, close, in line, nothing obstructing it. That's the golden rule.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Lomas, for that suggestion.
Could I?
Yes, sorry, Joe.
I'm a bureaucrat to trade, so I shouldn't say this. I worry you're drowning people in paper. We just had a discussion about how difficult it is to get parish councillors, and there's got to be some kind of synthesis of what you wish to draw to their attention, so they can then maybe follow up and go further on it. Because if it's already seen as a burden to get parish councillors, giving them a lot more to do to enable them to become parish councillors makes it more difficult to get them to become parish councillors. Now, there isn't that doesn't resolve the issue about minimum information that they need to acquire, but it's just a caution about how much people think needs to be loaded onto them before they can do the job.
That's a fair point. Councillor Pavlovic.
But equally, and I completely take that. I completely take that point. But you know, by the same token, there is a responsibility. You know, being a parish councillor or being a ward councillor does bring with it certain responsibilities. And I think if you go into it just thinking, oh, this is no big deal. That there's no responsibility. That there's no onus on me to or my, you know, my behaviour to be the same as it would be in any other context. That's where one of the problems I think that we've picked up, you know, about respect and about conflict. Well, it's not a conflict to me, you know, but legally, technically, it is a conflict. You know, there is a way to speak to people, and so. Be careful. My only caveat, and I don't dispute the point you're making, is if you make it so laissez-faire that you actually take away any sense of gravitas for what the role is. Yeah. I absolutely take the point.
Good. Thank you. So I see no other hands. So we'll put together some ideas and some thoughts that we'll bring to the September meeting. But I just feel that the more we're, and I appreciate that obviously myself and Councillor Runciman and Councillor Fisher, we are parish councillors anyway, along with our two parish councillors around the table. But I'm a member of 5 parish councils. I have 5 parish councils in my ward. So, you know, that's 5 parish councils that don't have to be visited. It's all different, yeah. And I'm not a chair of any of them, which I'm quite happy with. My other slight concern is that I am aware that there are a number of parish councils have withdrawn from YLCA. They've withdrawn their membership from YLCA. I have to say, for me, that's concerning. And it's an issue that parish councils have with YLCA, and hopefully we can maybe get to the bottom of that. I know of 4 parish councils, my own parish council in Osbaldwick, as we've drawn. I wasn't at the meeting when that decision was made, but I just feel that, you know, we work really closely as a Joint Standards Committee with YLCA in terms of our policies, procedures. A lot of the training is done through YLCA. So a lot of the recruitment drive, as Di mentioned, is done through YLCA. So whilst I'm not here as an advocate of YLCA, I just think we just need to be mindful if we are going to do visits of parish councils, just where YLCA sits. And my other question, if YLCA are going to write to the parish councils to ask for a nomination, will the parish council that's not a member of YLCA get that invite? And I think, Councillor Fisher, you're right. I think they probably won't. So is there a fallback position? I guess that's a rhetorical question for Francis to go and have a look at. With all that in mind, in our November meeting, I would like to invite YLCA to come and talk to us. If you find that, I think that would be really helpful. We had them about 4 years ago. I think Sheena came from YLCA, and I think it would be good to have them with us, because again they can give us an up-to-date situation as to where they are with the parish councils here in York, and in terms of how we can improve that relationship. So I think there's a lot of things that we can bring. So we've just to cover off what I've suggested for us just to approve. So in the September meeting, it's the monitoring officer's report as normal, the review of the work plan as normal, but an update on training. But also we'll bring back to the September meeting some suggestions and ideas about visits to parish councils. Okay, we're all right there. And then in the November meeting, I just want to add that we'll invite YLCA to come and speak to us in our November meeting. So can I just have a nod of approval on those, please, if everyone's happy with that? Okay, lovely. So I'm going to move us on. Thank you ever so much for your involvement in that particular agenda item. We're looking now at item number 8, which is the monitoring officer's report on complaints received. We are going to do this in 2 parts. Again, if I can just remind you to keep your pink papers out of sight, out of line of sight. We're going to have a redacted report from the monitoring officer where we can ask questions, but again, please be mindful of the fact that we won't be mentioning names or compromising anybody's privacy on that report. We'll then end the recording. We'll go into a private session. We'll ask the press and public to leave, and then we'll go into that private session. And it's in that private session that Councillor Fisher will absent himself for the first or for one of those cases. Then he'll come back to take full discussion in the others. So with that, can I ask Francis if you can just give us an update on the redacted report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Then referring to the open complaints log, which is the Annex A1, nothing to add in terms of detail because that is private. General observations are that the numbers of complaints remain fairly steady. The proportion, which is CYC parish, remains fairly steady. We are progressing with the complaints fairly well. Subcommittees which are needed to be arranged, we have dates in mind for. The investigation, which is the first one, which is ongoing, I'm expecting a report from the lawyer mid-August in time for a September subcommittee. There is one new complaint I am aware of which came in after the date of publication of the papers. Unfortunately, that came in as a paper complaint with no contact details and didn't have sufficient information on it for us to be able to assess it. It really was a very bald complaint. It highlights an issue for us in terms of paper complaints having no trail. We will ensure that it is recorded on the log that a complaint was made but not progressed for lack of information and lack of ability to revert to the complainant in order to establish the facts around it, but we won't ignore it. We'll reassure members that we won't ignore that. It will be recorded, but that is a problem with people sending in a paper form with too little on it and no contact information. But nothing other than that to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I will just say this in the hope that whoever submitted that complaint may well be watching this public recording. If it was you, please do get in touch with us and let us know that it was you, so that we can progress that complaint in accordance with your wishes and with the policy and procedures. So we've kind of put that out there. Any questions to Francis on the redacted open? Looking around. No. That's fine. So at this point, we are going to end the recording. Thank you, Di.